That farce in Hollowpole. Even now, I can still smell the nauseating restlessness in the air that day. Back then, everyone had gone mad for that so-called golden dragon. The end of a legend, a miracle that wasn't supposed to exist. But I didn't care how beautiful that miracle was. Standing there amidst that crowd of mercenaries reeking of sweat and greed, I had only one thought in my mind. At any cost, I wanted that dragon's heart because only it could mend the broken, damned flaws within my body and cure the curse of my infertility. And then I saw you. You just appeared abruptly in my field of vision, covered in dust, carrying 2 swords like a wandering ghost. In that moment, Geralt, I really wondered if fate was playing a trick on me, or if you bastard, were just haunting me. Looking at you then, I couldn't even tell if I wanted the dragon's magic more, or if I wanted to freeze that face of yours, pretending to care about nothing, into a block of ice. Remember that camp? It was a circus. Gathered around the fire were not just us, but those Crinfrid reavers, Boholt and his lot. They weren't warriors, they were butchers, treating the hunt for a dragon as casually as slaughtering pigs in the mud. And that strange old man, Borch, calling himself 3 jackdaws. Even blinded by desire as I was, I could sense something off about him. There he was, with his 2 Zerrikanian bodyguards, discussing philosophy and boundaries amidst that greed. I thought him just a wealthy madman, never realizing the way he looked at us, like we were lost ants. But what irritated me most was you, Geralt. You damned witcher. You swore you wouldn't kill dragons because they don't harm humans yet. You tagged along. You walked among us mercenaries like a silent moral judge. Do you know what I thought back then? I felt you didn't come to protect me, but to watch me fail, to watch me crash and burn against the so-called impossible. The path was treacherous back then, Geralt. But what I remember most isn't the cliffs, but that so-called paladin, Ike of Denislal, that fanatic in shining armor, spouting righteousness, killing monsters on sight regardless of their nature. To him, the world was strictly black and white. Watching him pompously slaughter monsters that hadn't even tried to attack us, I couldn't help but turn to glance at you. You were there on Roach, brows furrowed, looking utterly impatient. In that moment, I suddenly realized the difference between you and him. Ake killed for some so-called divinity, whereas you did it merely to survive or perhaps to protect some foolish sorceress. Even though I hated you enough to grind my teeth and wanted to kick you off the cliff back then, I had to admit, in that moment I found you far more tolerable than that shining knight. You looked like an unwashed barbarian. But in that biting wind, only your scent made me feel real. Just like now. Come closer, Geralt. Back then I wanted to push you away, but tonight, I don't mind you being a little closer. After all, the bed here is much softer than that. Damned camp, isn't it? Fine. If you are allergic to affection, let's discuss the damn tent allocation back then. Don't tell me you've forgotten. Space in that camp was scarcer than my patience. That night, that mad old man Borch had some fit of insanity and actually invited us all to soak in his giant tub. Can you imagine? On the eve of a dragon hunt, amidst a bunch of cutthroats ready to stab each other in the back, holding a communal bath. Looking at that tub of hot water, I had 2 thoughts. First, I desperately wanted to wash off the dust. Second, if I went in, I'd have to endure the sight of those dwarves and mercenaries naked. Just the thought made me want to retch. And you stood there stiffly like a dim-witted student called upon by the teacher, not knowing where to look. I remember I deliberately asked you, "What is the matter, Geralt? Afraid the water's too hot, or afraid of being outshone by those 2 Zerrikanian women?" Seeing your awkwardness was more invigorating than any potion. Even on such a wretched night, watching you fumble was my sole amusement. So don't pretend you were so profound back then. In that moment, even the greatest witcher was just a fool faced with bathwater and women. What happened next wasn't so funny in that moment. The entire mountain was collapsing. The so-called dragon slayers were screaming like frightened turkeys, scrambling for their lives. And us, of course, we, the unlucky pair, were right in the center of the storm. I still remember that broken bridge. As we slid down, I didn't faint gracefully like a princess in a storybook. Instead, I remember screaming at you, cursing your ancestors. Because when you grabbed my wrist, your grip was so tight I thought you'd crush my bones. Admit it, Gerald. Did you feel particularly heroic then? One hand on the cliff, the other holding your ill-tempered ex-girlfriend dangling over the abyss. But all I could think was, if this guy dares to let go, I'll turn him into a slug before I hit the ground. But seriously, if you had hesitated for even a second, we would have been finished. Much as I hate to admit it, the feeling of being held that tightly by you wasn't entirely unpleasant. Except that afterwards you had no idea how to take credit, just stupidly asking if I was hurt. What a blockhead. Then, as in all clichéd stories, a miracle happened. But it wasn't a divine sign from the heavens. It was majesty rising from the abyss, the golden dragon Vilentetemeth. He didn't eat us as a snack. Instead, he saved us. When I finally found my footing on that rock and watched that strange old man, Borch who had bathed and drunk with us, transform into that glittering golden beast, I admit for the first time in my life, I felt like a fool, an absolute fool. I had imagined countless scenarios of facing a golden dragon, binding it with spells or deceiving it with words. But I never imagined I would stand there, listening to it speak to me with a voice full of pity and wisdom. He saw through everything, Gerald. He saw through my desire for that heart and the desperation behind that desire. Do you know what the irony is? Even then, I was still calculating how to carve something out of him, even after he had just saved my life. That is the instinct of a mage, and my curse forever calculating costs and benefits even in the face of a miracle. And you just stood there, didn't even draw your sword. You knew, didn't you? Or rather, your instincts had already told you that some things are not meant to be hunted. At that time, I found you incredibly annoying, because your inaction made me look particularly greedy. What Borch, or rather the golden dragon, said to me was more painful than any curse. He said some things cannot be changed. He said my womb was a wasteland, and even a dragon's heart could not make it bloom. It was like handing a drowning person a straw, only to burn it to ash right before their eyes. I felt as if the sky had collapsed. All my efforts, all my ambitions became meaningless in that instant. I didn't even have the energy to be angry. I just felt empty. But then he said something else to the both of us. He said, "You were made for each other, but nothing will come of it." That is the so-called bounds of reason. He didn't even need to foresee the future. He only needed to look at us, a mutated witcher, a stubborn sorceress, like ice and fire disaster when close, freezing when apart. I wanted to refute him so badly. I wanted to shout at that damn dragon, screw fate, screw the impossible. I wanted to prove him wrong, but looking at your face equally filled with despair, I couldn't say a word. Gerald, tell me, sitting here now, have we broken his prophecy? Or have we merely stolen a little time in the calm before the storm? But he was wrong. Or rather, in that moment, we decided to prove him wrong, when Beholt and those idiots refused to let the dragon go, intending to slaughter for that bounty. Do you know what happened? We, who could barely stand each other, suddenly became the only allies. It was quite a show, Gerald. I was blasting those mercenaries all over the place with magic, while you weaved through them with your sword. Honestly, though, I always mock your Witcher pirouettes. In that moment, watching you fight to protect that dragon. And me, I have to admit, it was a different form of courtship. Admit it, whether in bed or on the battlefield, we coordinate quite well. That feeling of knowing who you are going to strike and where I need to burn without saying a word, it moves me more than any sweet nothings. In that moment, to hell with fate, to hell with the impossible. As long as we can stand side by side and beat these bastards down, that is our possibility. Only next time could we leave that sheep Dorogare, that do-gooder out of it. He only gets in the way, ruining the violent aesthetic of our quality time. After the battle, everything was terrifyingly quiet. The golden dragon flew away with his child, leaving behind a mess, and that damned prophecy. And we were back to square one. I stood there, watching you sheathe your sword. I wanted so badly to walk over and hug you, to tell you I didn't believe in that nonsense, or even just ask you to take me away. But I didn't, and neither did you. You stood there like a log, waiting for me to speak first. We are just that proud enough to wear an indifferent smile even while our hearts are bleeding. So I left. Once again, I chose to leave. Rather than wait for that prophecy to come true, wait for us to loathe each other through endless arguments. It was better to cut it clean right there. At least we would remember that in that chaotic waltz we were each other's only reliance. When I left that day, I didn't even look back at you. I know if you had seen my expression then, you would have been smug, because back then, I must have looked like a little girl who had just lost her entire world. That story had a lousy ending, didn't it? Sounded like a third-rate romance novel destined for tragedy. But look at now, Geralt. Look at where we are. Veluntatemuth was a wise ancient dragon, but he was just a lizard in the end, not a god. He saw through our natures, you like a hedgehog, me like a blizzard. But he missed one thing, stubbornness. We are both the type who, upon hitting a wall, don't just turn back but blow the wall to pieces. That prophecy said nothing will come of it. But he didn't see this room, didn't see this fine wine, and didn't see that. Look on your face, you are practically drooling. The fact that we are sitting here is the greatest mockery of fate. So here is the lesson of tonight's story. Witcher, never trust flying lizards, especially when it comes to relationships. The only thing in this world that determines our ending is whether I want to kick you out of bed, and whether you can tolerate me stealing your blankets in the morning. Sometimes I wonder if on that mountain the dragon had actually given me that heart. If I had truly cured that curse, how would things have turned out? Would I have become one of those boring noblewomen living in a castle, raising children? Would you have become a henpecked husband coming home every night, complaining about too few contracts? Just imagining that scene gives me goosebumps. It is too mediocre. That life doesn't suit us, Geralt. We are marked by chaos, restlessness flows in our blood. Perhaps the dragon was right, some things cannot be changed, but that isn't necessarily bad. It is precisely because of that flaw, that unfillable void, that I became the Yennefer I am, and you became the Geralt you are. It is because we are both incomplete that when we are pieced together, there are so many sparks, so much, passion enough to burn down the world. So don't feel regret over those. Compared to that potentially mediocre and boring perfect ending, I much prefer this reality-flawed occasionally making me want to strangle you. But never boring. What do you say? Actually, that old man Borch miscalculated one thing. The biggest variable. He said nothing would come of us. But he forgot the law of surprise. He forgot that ashen-haired girl, that little trouble who barged into our lives like a storm. Ciri, she is simply the loudest slap in the face of that prophecy by destiny. Look at her, Geralt. She has your stubbornness, that foolishness of sticking to a path until the bitter end, and she has my temper, that impulse to blast everything flat at the slightest disagreement. Sometimes looking at her, I wonder, did we create a hero, or did we manufacture a monster? Remember our days at the temple of Milaitel in Elander. I tried to teach her magic, to control chaos, to think like a lady. And you? At Kaer Morhen, you taught her how to roll in the mud, how to swing a sword like a barbarian, and how to eat like a ghoul that hasn't seen meat in 3 days. I spent so much energy trying to raise her into a noble sorceress, yet her posture when sitting is still as uninhibited as yours. I haven't settled this score with you yet, Geralt. Since we mentioned Ciri, we must revisit the masterpiece that led to our reunion. I refer, of course, to that letter of plea you wrote me. Even in 100 years, Geralt, I will carve this grievance onto your tombstone. Dear friend. What was our relationship? We slept together, fought, battled a djinn together, and fell off a cliff together. And yet, inside that rock-hard skull of yours, after much deliberation, the best title you could squeeze out was Dear Friend. In that moment, I truly debated whether to go to Kaer Morhen to help you train Ciri, or to simply go there and turn you into a toad. I think you did it on purpose. You wanted to provoke me with that overly polite distance, or perhaps to mask your pitiful, bewildered shyness. Admit it, when facing feelings, you are more terrified than when facing a higher vampire. However, my reply was brilliant, wasn't it? I called you dear friend throughout the entire letter. Every greeting was a poisoned dagger, every spot of ink screaming my displeasure at you. If you didn't read the murderous intent between the lines back then, you are truly denser than a troll. Scolding aside, I went anyway, not just for Ciri, but also to see your clumsy, flustered self. And after that, during that brief time, something more incredible than dragon slaying happened. We actually lived together like a family. The wolf, the sorceress, and the swallow. 3 freaks destined for solitude, forced under one roof. You were in charge of swinging swords and cooking that awful roast meat. I was in charge of teaching that wild girl how to read complex runes, and incidentally how to scare off idiots trying to flirt with just a look. Do you know what I loved most about that time? Not Ciri's progress, nor magical achievements. It was those moments after dinner. Watching you sit in the corner maintaining your sword, listening solemnly as Ciri chattered and complained about me not letting her wear lipstick. In those moments, you didn't look like a cold-blooded killer, just like a clumsy father helpless against his daughter, looking to his wife for aid. Though I always rolled my eyes back then, scolding you for spoiling her. But deep down, Geralt, for the first time in my life, I felt that the word home didn't sound like a lie. But for people like us, happiness is like dew on a spiderweb crystal clear, yet too fragile to withstand even a breeze. Then came the coup on Thaindead Island, the beginning of the nightmare. Do you know what pained me the most? Not being compressed into a jade figurine by a spell, trapped in the darkest pocket of the world, nor facing the judgment of those self-righteous bitches of the Lodge of Sorceresses. It was the silence. During that time, I was separated from Ciri and lost contact with you. I couldn't hear your heartbeat. Couldn't feel your existence. It felt like having half my soul ripped out alive. Every day in that void I screamed, trying to touch you with my thoughts, telling that foolish witcher, don't die. Wait for me. Though I hate to admit it, what kept me from going mad back then, aside from the obsession to find Ciri, was well, let's call it trust in you. I believed that even if the whole world gave up, you stubborn bastard would turn the continent upside down to find us. As it turns out, on that point alone, you never disappointed me. To find Ciri, to see your living face again, I did many things that made me sick to my stomach. Deal with Emhyr, Var Emreis, of course. If it could save our daughter, I wouldn't mind dancing with the devil, let alone that arrogant Nilfgaardian emperor. And that creepy humour back at Kaer Morhen, Vesemir and the others thought I was mad. Even you looked at me with that suspicion, Geralt. You all thought I was too cruel, wanting to use the trial of the grasses on that grotesque shell. You saw suffering, while I saw the only chance. I have no regrets. Even if I had to do it again, I would. I would still destroy that sacred garden, still use that necromancy to the bitter end. In this world full of monsters, only by being more ruthless than the monsters can one protect the people one wishes to protect. Do you know why? Because in that moment I knew if I didn't play the villain, if I didn't shoulder that infamy, we would all die. And in my story, even if the ending is hell, I will walk there holding your hand, and Ceres rather than watching you fall before me. That final battle, I suppose I couldn't forget it even if I wanted to. It was the end of the world. The moment the white frost descended, it was so cold that day even magic shivered. Yet I felt no cold, only fear. Not for myself, but for Ciri. Watching her walk into that tower towards that unknown white light that might swallow her whole. In that moment, I truly wished that damned elder blood was in me. I truly wished it was I facing that blizzard, not that little girl who hadn't yet enjoyed much of a peaceful life. You stood beside me then, Geralt. We didn't speak, didn't even hold hands. We just stood there, like two statues on the verge of crumbling. But I could feel your despair. It resonated with mine, like a silent scream. Do you know, in that moment, I suddenly understood the true meaning of a wish. Not a wish granted by a djinn, not that magic forcibly binding fates together. In that moment, my only wish didn't even need to be spoken, just that she survive, even if the price was your life and mine in exchange. Fortunately, she is stronger than the both of us combined. She defeated the White Frost, just as she defeated every fate that tried to control her. Before the dust settled on everything, there was one matter we had to resolve. Remember that wrecked ship atop the snowy mountain? The last wish. I was truly terrified back then, Geralt. More terrified than facing the wild hunt. Because I wanted to know if both you and I were freed from the djinn spell, freed from that forced destiny. What would become of us? When we were no longer two people bound together by magic, would you look at me and discover you didn't actually love me at all? That I was just an ill-tempered, controlling witch? When the spell was lifted, the moment I felt that magical connection snap, I looked at you. The world in that instant was so quiet, only the wind remained. Then you said you felt the change too, but your feelings hadn't changed. You said you still loved me. That one sentence was worth more than all the spells I learned at Aretusa. Only then did I truly believe that some things are more stubborn than magic, more powerful than destiny. Even without a djinn, even without those messy prophecies, this foolish white wolf still chose to stay by this black cat's side. So, is this our ending now? Corvo Bianco, sunshine, wine, and that majordomo of yours, Barnabas, Basil, busy fixing up the house all day. Honestly, when I first arrived, I thought I'd go mad. It is too normal here. No conspiracies, no mortal danger. Even the monsters here are lazy. For someone used to dancing on the edge of a blade, this comfort felt like a slow-acting poison. But yesterday afternoon, as I was reading under the trellis, watching you inspect those vines like a common farmer, I suddenly realized perhaps this is what I've always wanted. Not the grand ending I imagined, but just enough sunshine to bask in, enough wine to get us drunk, and enough time for us to argue and make up. Although I still hate the bugs here, and I will never actually help you pick grapes. That is a peasant's job, not a sorceress's, I have to admit. Geralt, the place you picked isn't bad. So, the story is done. That long legend of the golden dragon, of destiny, of the bounds of reason, has turned to dust in the passage of time. Even a creature as wise as Villain Totemeth could not foresee this scene. Two hearts, deemed cold and mutated by the world, burning for each other on this night. In this quiet corner, don't just stand there like a fool, Witcher. Outside, there may be cold nights and monsters waiting for you to slay. But in here, within these curtains, there is only the scent of lilac and gooseberries and your sorceress. Come here, Gerald. Prove to that damned fate one last time. It may write the beginning, but only we can decide the ending. Good night, my white wolf.